There comes a moment in life when your soul grows tired. Not tired from work, not tired from responsibilities, but tired from constantly giving your energy to someone who only knows how to take. At the beginning, the drain on your energy is almost invisible. Nothing feels obviously wrong. There are no loud alarms telling you that something unhealthy is happening. In fact, everything may look normal from the outside. You continue living your life, going through your days, believing that what you are experiencing is simply part of a relationship. But slowly, in very quiet ways, your energy begins to disappear. You start noticing that after spending time with this person, you feel unusually tired. Not the kind of tired that comes from physical work, but a deeper kind of exhaustion that sits in your chest and mind. Conversations that should feel simple somehow leave you feeling heavy. Instead of feeling supported, you feel like you are constantly explaining yourself, defending yourself, or trying to keep the peace. At first, you try to ignore it. You tell yourself that everyone has difficult moments. You convince yourself that relationships require patience and understanding. So you keep giving more of yourself. You listen longer. You forgive quicker. You try harder to make things work. But something inside you begins to change. Your mind becomes occupied with thoughts about this person. You replay conversations in your head, wondering if you said something wrong. You think about how to avoid upsetting them next time. You carefully choose your words, trying to prevent another misunderstanding or argument. Without realizing it, you begin walking on emotional eggshells. Small moments that should feel peaceful start to feel tense. You become alert to their mood, their tone, their reactions. If they are unhappy, you immediately feel responsible. If they are distant, you begin questioning what you did wrong. This constant awareness slowly drains your mental and emotional energy. Over time, you may start noticing that your own needs become less important. You put their feelings first, their problems first, their comfort first. You begin adjusting your behavior, your opinions, even your personality, just to maintain harmony. The strange thing is that you might not even notice how much you have changed. Your laughter becomes less natural. Your voice becomes quieter. Your thoughts become more cautious. You stop expressing certain ideas because you know it might lead to tension. You avoid certain topics because they might trigger conflict. Slowly, parts of your authentic self begin to disappear. And yet you still try to convince yourself that everything is fine. You tell yourself that things will improve with time. You believe that if you are patient enough, understanding enough, loving enough, the situation will eventually get better. What the drain continues. What once felt like a small discomfort slowly becomes a constant weight. Your peace becomes rare. Even when the person is not around, your mind remains occupied with them. You begin feeling emotionally exhausted without fully understanding why. This is often the moment when a quiet awareness begins to appear. A subtle realization that something in the relationship is taking far more than it is giving. A realization that your energy, your calm, and your happiness are slowly being consumed in a way that no relationship should ever require. Leaving someone who drains you sounds simple when people talk about it from the outside. Many will say, if someone makes you unhappy, just walk away. But the truth is rarely that simple. The emotional weight of a relationship cannot be measured only by the pain it causes. It is also shaped by memories, attachment, and the hope that things might one day become different. When you have spent a long time with someone, your lives become intertwined in ways that are difficult to separate. Shared experiences create a powerful bond. You remember the good moments, the laughter, the early days when everything felt lighter and full of promise. Those memories often become the reason you stay longer than you should. Even when the present feels heavy, your mind keeps returning to the past. You remember how things used to be. You remember the moments when they were kind, when they understood you, when the relationship felt safe and meaningful. And so you hold on to the belief that the person you once knew is still there somewhere beneath the conflict and negativity. You convince yourself that if you are patient enough, supportive enough, or loving enough, that version of them will return. Hope becomes a powerful chain. It tells you that tomorrow might be better. It whispers that this difficult phase will pass. It makes you believe that leaving now would mean giving up too soon. Another reason it is so difficult to leave is the emotional responsibility you begin to carry. When someone constantly depends on you for stability, comfort, or validation, you start feeling like their well-being rests on your shoulders. You may begin to believe that if you leave, they will fall apart. This belief can create a deep sense of guilt. You might feel like walking away would make you selfish. You may worry that others will judge you or misunderstand your decision. Sometimes the person draining you reinforces this fear by reminding you of everything they have done for you, or by making you feel responsible for their struggles. Slowly, the relationship stops feeling like a partnership and starts feeling like a duty. Another invisible chain is familiarity. Even when a relationship is unhealthy, it can still feel comfortable, simply because it is known. You understand the patterns, the arguments, the cycles. Your mind becomes used to navigating them. The unknown, however, feels frightening. Leaving means stepping into uncertainty. It means facing loneliness, rebuilding your routine, and rediscovering who you are outside of the relationship. For many people, the fear of that uncertainty feels heavier than the pain they are currently experiencing. There is also the quiet fear of regret. You may ask yourself difficult questions. What if things could have improved? What if you just needed to try a little longer? What if leaving becomes a mistake you cannot undo? These thoughts can keep you trapped in a cycle of hesitation. So you stay? Not because the situation is healthy, but because the emotional ties, the memories, the sense of responsibility, and the fear of the unknown all work together to make leaving feel like an impossible decision. The moment you decide to walk away does not usually arrive with loud certainty. It rarely feels heroic or dramatic. In fact, it often comes after a long period of inner conflict. For a long time, your mind moves back and forth between two voices. One voice tells you to stay, to keep trying, to be patient a little longer. The other voice quietly reminds you that something inside you is slowly breaking. At first, the voice that asks you to stay is usually stronger. It reminds you of the years you have already invested. It reminds you of promises, responsibilities, and expectations. It tells you that leaving would be too painful, too complicated, too unfair. But the other voice does not disappear. It grows slowly, almost silently. It begins to speak during the quiet moments, when you are alone with your thoughts. It speaks when you notice how tense your body feels around this person. It speaks when you realize how rarely you feel peaceful anymore. Over time, this voice becomes harder to ignore. You start recognizing a pattern that repeats itself again and again. The same arguments, the same emotional exhaustion, the same cycle of hope followed by disappointment. You begin to understand that the situation is not changing, and that waiting longer will not transform something that has already shown you its true nature. This realization can be painful because it forces you to face a truth you once tried to avoid. It asks you to accept that the person you hoped they would become may never appear. It asks you to stop chasing a version of the relationship that exists only in your imagination. And accepting that truth requires courage. Courage does not always look like strength. Sometimes it looks like vulnerability. Sometimes it looks like admitting that you have reached your limit. It means recognizing that your emotional well-being matters just as much as anyone else's. For many people, this is one of the hardest lessons to learn. You may have spent years prioritizing someone else's needs above your own. You may have convinced yourself that enduring the pain was a sign of loyalty or love. But eventually, something shifts inside you. You begin to realize that staying is costing you too much. Your peace is fading. Your confidence is weakening. Your energy is constantly being pulled into conflicts that never truly resolve. At this point, the idea of leaving stops feeling like betrayal and begins to feel like survival. Making the decision still feels heavy. Your mind may fill with doubts. You may question whether you are being too harsh or too impatient. But deep inside, there is also a quiet sense of clarity. It is the realization that protecting your peace is not selfish. Choosing to walk away does not mean you stopped caring. It simply means you have finally acknowledged that love cannot grow in a place where your spirit is constantly being drained. And even though fear may still be present, the strength to choose yourself slowly becomes stronger than the fear of letting go. After you finally leave, many people expect immediate relief. They imagine that the moment you walk away, a huge weight disappears and everything suddenly feels peaceful again. But the reality often more complicated than that. When you step out of a relationship that has drained you for so long, the first feeling is not always freedom. Sometimes it is emptiness. For a long time, your life revolved around the emotional energy of that connection. Your thoughts, your decisions, and even your daily routine were shaped by the presence of that person. You were used to the constant tension, the conversations, the effort of trying to fix things. Even the struggles became a familiar part of your life. When that suddenly disappears, the silence can feel strange. Your phone is quieter. Your mind is less occupied with the reactions. The emotional storms that once filled your days are no longer there. At first, this quiet can feel uncomfortable. Your mind may still search for the chaos it was once used to handling. You might catch yourself thinking about them more often than you expected. Memories return, sometimes the painful ones, but often the good ones. The mind has a way of softening the past. Instead of remembering the constant exhaustion, it may bring forward the rare moments of kindness or connection. You may begin to question your decision. You might wonder if things were really as difficult as they felt. Doubt slowly appears, whispering that maybe you overreacted or left too soon. This inner conflict is a very normal part of the process. When someone has been a major part of your emotional world, separating from them does not immediately erase the attachment. Your heart needs time to adjust to a new reality. The habits of thinking about them, worrying about them, or trying to understand them do not disappear overnight. Another challenge during this period is facing yourself again. While you were in the draining relationship, much of your focus was directed toward the other person. You were trying to manage their emotions, solve their problems, or avoid their anger. Your own inner world was often pushed aside. Now, in the absence of that constant distraction, you are left alone with your thoughts. This can feel unfamiliar. Questions may arise about who you are without the relationship. You may notice how much of your identity had slowly been shaped by the role you were playing, being the fixer, the peacemaker, the one who held everything together. Without that role, life may feel uncertain. You might also feel moments of loneliness. Even if the relationship was unhealthy, it still filled space in your life. Human beings naturally seek connection, and the sudden absence of someone who was once so present can leave a quiet void. During this phase, it is easy to misinterpret the emptiness as a mistake. But in reality, this emptiness is simply the mind and heart adjusting to a new chapter, one where the constant emotional noise has faded, leaving space that has not yet been filled with something healthier and more peaceful. After enduring the constant drain of someone else's energy, reclaiming your peace and power is not just a choice, it becomes a necessity. For so long, your focus was on surviving someone else's emotional storms, protecting them, managing them, or trying to meet impossible expectations. Your energy was spread thin, your priorities skewed, and your inner voice silenced. Walking away opens the door to rediscovering what you may have forgotten, that your life belongs to you and your peace is not negotiable. At first, reclaiming your power can feel slow. It is not like flipping a switch. It is a gradual process of remembering who you are outside the context of the draining relationship. You start by noticing the small things, the freedom to make choices without consulting someone else's mood or approval, the ability to spend your time as you truly wish, the chance to say no without guilt or fear. These moments, though small, are the first signs that your energy is returning to you. You may begin to realize how much your thoughts were previously occupied with someone else's needs, reactions, and expectations. The constant preoccupation, the overthinking, the self-doubt, all of it starts to dissolve. Your mind becomes quieter, your heart lighter, and your body less tense. The peace you once thought was unattainable starts to feel real. Reclaiming your power also means setting boundaries you may have never set before. You learn that saying no does not make you unkind, and protecting your space does not make you selfish. You understand that your energy is finite, and it must be guarded. You begin to recognize the difference between people who uplift you and those who drain you. And you start surrounding yourself with those who add value to your life rather than subtract from it. Another part of reclaiming your power is reconnecting with your own desires, passions, and goals. For years, your focus may have been on maintaining someone else's happiness, stability, or approval. Now, you can turn your energy inward. You can invest in yourself. Pursue the things that ignite your spirit and engage in activities that make you feel alive. Slowly, confidence returns, not as a loud declaration, but as a quiet inner strength that reminds you that you are capable, worthy, and resilient. As you continue, you may notice a profound shift in how you perceive relationships. You start to understand that true connection does not drain you, that love and friendship should feel mutual, supportive, and uplifting. You develop a sharper sense of self-awareness, learning to trust your instincts and to honor your emotions without fear of judgment or rejection. Finally, reclaiming your peace and power brings clarity. You begin to see the patterns that once held you captive and understand the lessons they carried. You realize that your life is not meant to be spent in survival mode, but in full, authentic living. The person who once drained you no longer has the power to steal your energy because you have remembered who you are and what your spirit deserves. This process is transformative. It may take time, patience, and self-compassion, but every step forward strengthens you. With each boundary set, each moment of self-care, and each decision to prioritize your own well-being, you are reclaiming not only your peace, but the full measure of your power. You begin to walk with a quiet confidence, a calm resilience, and the knowledge that your life is finally yours to live fully. And so, after all the struggle, the doubt, and the fear, you arrive at a place of quiet strength. Walking away from someone who drains you is not a failure. It is an act of courage, self-respect, and love for yourself. You have learned that your energy is sacred, your peace is priceless, and your life is meant to be lived fully, not spent surviving someone else's chaos. In reclaiming your space, your mind, and your heart, you open the door to freedom, clarity, and joy. You discover that leaving is not the end, but the beginning of a life where you are whole, empowered, and finally truly alive.